Welcome back, I'm Tedward. Welcome to the side of a highway in New York at a rest stop on a road trip with my 2023 Lexus GX460. I've got 6,000 miles on this vehicle now, so I wanted to give you a little ownership update, and just to prove that I am driving it, look at the bug smattering. This is horrifying, and they're all mosquitoes, so it's bloody and disgusting. I'm sorry for showing you this on camera, but the only piece of damage I think I have on this car right now is I got a rock chip right here on the hood, right in that edge. So I'm gonna have to have my guy take care of that because I don't want that to spread. Keeping this thing clean, not my highest priority, but I never did anything to it. Like, I didn't ceramic coat it, I didn't PPF it. This car is raw through the road, and maybe that's a mistake, but here's the deal. I bought this GX just to be a killer daily driver that I can stack shameless miles on. And honestly, I'm loving it. So let's jump in, start it up, and get back on the road because I have another like 5 hours of driving to do. And I'm gonna have to stop for gas at some point, but I'm gonna wind down this tank. So half a tank, that's good because I feel like I try to sync it up with my bladder. And the big thing that everyone was complaining about when I bought this car was the fuel economy. They're like, why on earth would you buy that pig, that V8 pig? Well, this V8 pig only does about like 2 miles per gallon less than the new GX. Ooh, is that a 470? Yes, GX buddy. And I'm gonna tell you right now, I'll prove this to you. I left Buffalo and I have been driving for over an hour, and I've done 21.3 miles per gallon. Now that's not like common, that's not easy to do, but that was at like 75 miles an hour, and it's probably because we're a little bit going downhill. But you know, it's not so bad. Oh, we love it. We love to see it. That's great. Does not give a shit. He's like, how do you have all that cool stuff in like fuel tanks on your car? Someone gives you a thumbs up and you're like, what? Like, dude, like, you've obviously considered this. You've obviously put some effort into this. Cool Airstream. But I do love this V8, and it has so much juicy torque. It's not fast, but it's grunty enough that you don't need to like wind it out all the time. So here's the thing. Why buy a giant body on, not even giant, I mean, it's the mid-size, it's not the biggest, but a body on frame SUV instead of getting an S-Class, a 7 Series, an A8, something that's like designed to just chew highway miles? Well, number one is capability. Like, I wanted a more diverse car. I have an E39 M5, so I didn't want to get another just big body thing. Like, that car could do that, but like, here's the problem. I am a mileage sensitive dude, and like, the M5 has 82,000 miles on it. I don't know that I want to go and stack like 100,000 miles on the car. I should. This is a deeper conversation because frankly, we should be less afraid of our odometers than we are. At least I should be. I could be hit by a bus, I could get some terminal illness, and honestly, if I go out of this world having preserved the odometers on my cars, well, that's just a waste. But there's maintenance involved with that. And an E39 with 82,000 miles, that's like 20 years old, it's gonna require some stuff. I've gotta do some upgrades and stuff on that car already, and maybe once I do some suspension refresh stuff on that car, we'll put more miles on it. But here's the thing. This car is rugged. So not only can it go and do some off-roady things, but on a long road trip, it's incredibly comfortable because you've got these nice big bushings between the body and the frame. So there's an added level of sort of comfort. It's not simply suspension. You've got big old sidewall on these tires. You've got that added layer of bushings between the body and frame. And you've got a fairly cushy suspension to boot. But that sidewall means that I can go over ugly roads. Now, right now, we're on a nice stretch of highway. This is okay. But here's the thing. We get into cities all the time. You have to, if you're navigating stuff through Boston to New York, my goodness, the treacherous nightmare of potholes going into New York, going into Manhattan, going into all these places. It's really tricky. And look, I love my Honda Civic Type R. It is just a Civic at the end of the day. I mean, it's a very special Civic, but a 19-inch wheel with like 35 or 40 profile aspect ratio tires, it's just a flat tire waiting to happen. You're just waiting to hit the wrong hole at the wrong time. You glance down and boom, there it is, done. And there's no spare tire. Most cars don't come with spare tires anymore. It's a travesty. It's stupid. It drives me nuts. This is one of those things. We can complain all we want about EVs in the market and how everything's going to crap and nothing's going to be the same. But like, guys, at least give me a spare tire, because putting goo in the back of the car only solves the problem if I have a goo solvable problem. And a lot of times when you nail something ugly, like you've bent a wheel, it's not simply like, oh, there's a cute little hole in the tire, in the perfect spot on this tread that you can goo it up and it'll just seal and be fine. No, it almost never works that way. You hit a pothole, it bends a wheel, it's just gonna DB the tire if it hasn't already cracked the sidewall, and you're toast. So while 30 miles per gallon in my Civic with Apple CarPlay and all kinds of lovely features is nice, I don't necessarily always trust it to get me there on time, because all it takes is one tire to go and you're adding hours of tow trucks and nightmare and misery to your drive. Like, it just sucks. And that's if you blow that tire during business hours, right? If you blow a tire at night, like, no tire shop is helping you. You're out of luck, man. Like, that's toast. So now you've got to stay over somewhere. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Whereas in this GX, not only is it pretty unlikely that I'm going to blow a tire because of a road imperfection, because of the monster tires that are on this thing, but if it does happen, well, I've got a spare, and I can just drop that spare down and I can pop it on and I'm good to go. And I'm getting tailgated by this woman in a Chevy sedan, which is just like hysterical. Like, honey, where you want me to go? Where you want me to go? I'm going to be a good doobie. Like, another thing about this car is it relaxes me. So over the past 6,000 miles, I've become a calmer driver, because when you drive a car that's like sort of less maneuverable, it forces you to just kind of accept your fate a little bit. There's a real beauty to kind of letting go of the control of, like, these people are in my way, I'm in this zippy supercar, or my Honda Civic Type R, or my 911, or my M5. Like, when you're in those cars, everyone's just in your way. They're taking up space. They're taking up roadway that is meant for you to go fast and get there before everybody else and beat the heck out of the Waze situation. Like, that's what those cars do to your mentality. Whereas in the GX, like, what am I going to do? The fastest I'm going to drive this thing is 80 miles an hour, and I don't really even want to drive at 80 miles an hour because it starts to kill my fuel economy. So I don't. And that's where, when you drive a vehicle that kind of forces you within these limits, that you're really not going to be going more than like 75 miles an hour, it makes everything so much just simpler, because you run out of options. If you're at a restaurant that has like 10,000 menu options, like a Cheesecake Factory, you get there and you're like, what the heck am I going to get? And then you're wondering, did I make the right choice? Is this the one that I want? Oh, does this appetizer go with this entree? And how much am I spending? No, you go to like that burger joint that has one burger and you can put some ketchup on it or something, and you know it's good every single time. Done. Job done. That's the stuff. That's what you want to do. And that's what this GX does. It takes the option away. You do not have the option to drive like a psycho. You don't have the option to, weave through traffic. It would just be a waste of your time. Something to note about these vehicles is that the speedometer is off. It is not correct. It says 80, it's 78. It's always a 2 mile an hour delta on these things. And that's just something you accept and you understand. The other thing is that it's pretty blunt. So I don't know what the drag coefficient on it is, but it means that I almost never touch the brakes. On the highway, all you have to do, if you want to bleed off 5 or 10 miles an hour, is you kill the cruise control. It'll slow right down. So one thing, these do have like undersized brakes, and it doesn't matter because I almost never use them. The amount of time I spend on highways is so much higher than I spend on back roads. So most of my miles are just cruising at 75 miles an hour, So I'm very rarely touching the brakes. Do you want to pass me or not? And so far, I've really only done the most bare minimum maintenance. Now, if you remember the story of this car, this is my third new GX, blah, 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 drive shaft issues probably on the other ones, but, now I got a good one. It's smooth. It took a little while for these tires to actually break in. These dualers felt a little wonky, especially around like 65 miles per hour. They'd smooth out after 70, but like if I was ever going slower between kind of 60 and 70 miles an hour, there was some noises. And I knew it was tire noise. I wasn't concerned about driveline, and that's a very easy solvable problem. You just replace tires if they're not good. But like honestly, bashing in some miles on these tires did a world of good. So just putting a couple 3,000 miles on these tires, I think really did the job. And then the maintenance schedule on this car, what they do is they have you come in every 5,000 miles. So for the first 5,000 mile checkup, all they're doing is like checking and topping off fluids and rotating your tires. Now, I don't think they do a 5 tire rotation because remember, there's a spare in the back. I'm kind of not a huge fan of a 5 tire rotation because it means that you're always have one tire that's way off in terms of wear, and it's got to be wonky. And I know people like to integrate their spare tire into the rotation. I prefer just doing either a cross rotation or a forward back rotation, just to keep all of them in play, but that way you don't have one that just has like brand new tread while the others have 5,000 miles on them. I'm sure there's some science behind that, and people are going to be like, well, I do that. That's great. Do whatever you want. That's fantastic. But what they don't do at 5,000 miles on the Lexus service interval is an oil change. They do 10,000 mile oil changes on this car. And what's funny is that that's not unheard of. It's not crazy. But for a first oil change, that's a little long. A lot of people will do a first oil change at like 500 or 1,000 miles. I think that's a little overkill. But what I did was I just paid them to do an oil change at 5,000 miles. I'm like, look, let's just do 5,000 mile oil changes. And what's funny is they'll give you a free oil change at 10,000 miles, but they wouldn't give me a free oil change at 5,000 miles because I'm like, look, let's just use that 5,000 mile service. We'll call it the 10,000 or whatever and just rotate tires, change oil, top off fluids, all set. No, they wouldn't do that, which was fine. I wasn't going to argue with it because I'm going to put 10,000 miles on it and I'm going to get my free oil change at 10,000. But it's just funny because they look at you funny when you say, I want an oil change. They're like, well, you don't need one. It's early. I'm like, I know, but I'd like one. And they're like, but you see, sir, this uses synthetic oils and synthetic oils last longer. And I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. Like, it's 2024, man. Like, everything's synthetic. It would be hard to find non-synthetic oil at this point. Like, I know what it is. It's fine. It's just that I, as the customer, and hopeful owner of this car for like 400,000 miles, would like to just do shorter intervals. It usually means that you're going to get more life out of your engine if you're a little more cautious about that stuff. So anyway, paid for it. Great. It's like $100 and something, nothing insane. I'll start doing it myself. But what I wanted was that oil change on the Carfax. I really wanted that Carfax oil change service at 5,000 miles and 10,000 miles, just to prove to any next owners, if I were to sell this car privately, that they're like, this dude took care of it. They do 10,000 mile oil changes. This dude came in at 5. Like, that's something that I look for, because when I look for a car on private market, if I look at a Carfax and I see that like their first recorded oil change was like 25,000 miles, I'm like, oh boy, that's a little terrifying. So anyway, I typically do that on my cars where I'm like, well, I do oil changes myself, but in the beginning, I'm going to get them done at the dealership, so that way it hits the Carfax and it's not just me in my driveway. Like, look, I've got the receipts. Like, unless I film the video, who the heck is going to do that? They're not going to watch that video. So we talked ride comfort, but interior noise. It's so quiet in here. And this is one of those reasons why I could have got a 4Runner, and there's a lot of reasons I didn't get a 4Runner. I wanted the V8, I wanted like the plush, Lexus vibes and everything, and I wanted full-time all-wheel drive, and I know you can get that on the limited trim of the 4Runner, but I was going to get a TRD off-road if I was going to get one. But double pane glass, it's quiet this is so quiet. And it's amazing how a 4Runner is essentially the same platform. They're a little different, but overall, essentially the same platform. And they are just a world apart in the way they sound and behave, and the driving experience is just so much more premium in the Lexus. So I'm kind of getting my 7 Series with the SUV game, and that's really what this car was all about. But there are other options. The Chevy Suburban, for example, well, it's a Tahoe. The new Suburban is so good. Like, it's insanely good. It is so cushy. It is so comfortable. You can get a high country with air suspension, a 3-liter turbo diesel that'll get almost 30 miles per gallon, sometimes more if you drive a little slower. It's incredible. And diesel right now costs about the same as premium fuel. So apples to apples for this at 93 octane, you're getting 10 more miles per gallon. And you get a 28-gallon tank, so the thing does like 700 miles of range. It's absurd. It's just crazy. That, however, is like a $94,000 truck. And if you go down the line and get a lower trim level, then you start adding some options, you're kind of in that $65,000 to $70,000 range. And now you're not getting all the bells and whistles. Whereas like this, yep, $65,000, $66,000 MSRP, talked down to 56 grand. I feel really good about the money I spent on this and the miles that I can put on this V8 and not worry about it. And that's where, you know, could have bought a new GX550. Well, look, I'm not seeing like recalls come out for the 550, but that twin turbo V6 has been problematic, super problematic in the Tundras and a couple other vehicles that Toyota is making. And you're not buying a Toyota product because it might be unreliable. Like, you're buying a Toyota product because you're pretty confident as long as it doesn't rust away, you're gonna get 500,000 miles out of the car. And this V8 is like tried, true, proven, all that good stuff. And then the next generation, great looking vehicle, haven't driven it yet, but everyone says it's nice. I honestly prefer analog gauges. I prefer this layout. I prefer this sort of old school design. I think it looks more Japanese. Like, this body is just like, it reminds me of like a Nissan Quest in a way that like it just doesn't quite fit into society. It looks a little out of place. Another GX on the side of the road. It looks un-American. Like, it looks like it doesn't belong in this country a little bit, and I think that's fun. I think it has more cachet in that regard. Whereas the new GX kind of looks like a Defender, kind of looks like an Ineos, kind of looks like, okay, yeah, you fit the zeitgeist of the US market, and that's fine. Just not really for me. But I don't want more complexity. And if you're going to give me more complexity, you got to give me way better fuel economy. Like, if you're going to add turbos and all kinds of other technology, it needs to do like what the turbo diesel does, and that's Suburban, for me to bite. Because if I'm going to spend, more money, 75 grand probably on that, it's got to pay me off somewhere else. And it just, at this point, doesn't look like it's going to do that. It is more off-road capable. This isn't. But again, all this to say, after 6,000 miles in this, I do not regret buying it. There was a little bit of a moment where when I bought this, I thought, I cannot believe I'm spending so much money. I cannot believe I'm spending so much money on like a daily driver. I'm not putting it toward like the dream Porsche, the GT3 or whatever, but I'm like, I kind of want to be happy with what I have, and I want my sports cars to be really drivable. If I'm already so obsessed about odometers that I'm like, I want to get a winter daily so I can preserve my Honda, like, you think I'm going to go put 50,000 miles on a GT3? I don't know. I don't know that I have the psychology behind that. I got to work on that. And that's something that I want to personally get better at, is just like stacking miles on my cars and not worrying about resale value and everything. After that rest stop, 21 miles per gallon. So I'm still cranking away, man. That's what I was doing for the first like hour and a half. The only problem I thought I had with this car when I got it was the alignment. It felt like it was pulling to the right, but really what I think it does is it pulls with the crown of the road. So I spend most of my time in the right lane because I don't drive very fast in this car, and I do find myself having to put in a little bit of left-hand input to keep it going in a straight line. And so to me, I thought, well, maybe there's something wrong with it. There was a KDSS recall with the kinetic dynamic suspension system on the earlier models, but I'm pretty sure those were leaning to the left, not to the right. So I think that's disproven. I don't think I have to worry about that. But what I find is if I'm in a center lane, it tracks perfectly straight. If I'm in the right lane, it'll pull to the right a little bit. See, I got to add a little bit of left input. There's no one behind me, so we can do this cordially. And if I get in the left lane, where the crown kind of dips off a little bit like that, it'll pull to the left a little bit. So I think it's just the nature of the way these trucks are set up, the way these SUVs are set up, if you get mad at me for saying truck. And it just means that these take a little more effort to drive. That's all. Like, you've got to put some effort into it. And I do I do think about long term, does that put additional strain on the power steering system? Is that like, oh, that power steering pump's not going to last as long because you're always kind of engaging it to keep it moving in a certain way? I don't know. We'll find out. I mean, that's why we're doing updates, man. But so far, so good. 6,400 miles here now. Oh, don't do that. Don't just stop on the highway. That's insane. Please keep driving. I even moved over for it. Yeah, I think for 6,400 miles, I am just so happy with this purchase. Yeah, I could have gone and bought like a used Autobahn burner, some big body BMW or Mercedes or Audi. But I wanted something different. I wanted the SUV experience, and I think for what I use this for in the winters and how I want it to behave during like long road trips and the room that I have in this thing, if I want to put people in it, stuff in it, it just takes all the stress away. So I'm really happy I've got this. And fuel economy wise, honestly, not much worse, if not equal to some of those big body sedans, because those are all going to be like pigs. They're going to be twin turbo V8s. They're going to be thirsty. And chances are I'm just going to drive them faster. They're going to cost more to get into, and I'm going to get speeding tickets. So something about this being a little bit self-limiting in the speed, honestly, probably doing my driver's license and wallet some favors. So look, that's all I gotta say. I think this thing is gonna be covered in bugs. I'll show you when we get home, but I just love having a sort of like classy, enjoyable beater that I can stack miles on and not worry too much about, that I can drive during the winter. I can stack miles in the summer. I can do a little off-roading and stuff. And yeah, don't worry about it. I got you. You're gonna get that left lane the second I got it open. But so far, no regrets. There's nothing else I would have rather bought. So I'm glad I bought it. Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you got questions about this GX, let me know. And if you're like, why haven't you jacked it up on a lift kit and put some big tires on it? Well, I'll tell you what. Just done 21.7 miles per gallon at an average of 70 miles per hour the past hour and 15 minutes. That's why. That's straight up why. Like, I'm doing a lot of highway driving on this thing. The second you put some big old meaty rubber on this thing, say goodbye to that fuel economy. It's game over. You go down to 12. And I don't know, man. That's kind of expensive. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one.